I just started before it was time up for the adjournment of the House. And I'd acknowledged the good work that has been done by this committee, led by the distinguished Senator of Tana River, Senator Mungatana. And because he moved the motion very clearly, using very articulative means, I don't want to belabor, but I just want to appreciate some of the salient points that I've found in this committee's report. Mr. Speaker, the committee has been humble enough to realize the complexity of the work at hand and come out with 1 to 9 action points, which it has recommended to the Directorate of Criminal Investigations and the DPP to take up, let it undergo the due process so that this criminality should be brought to an end. I allowed them, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, further to this, I want to appreciate the committee because they have asked the Cabinet Secretary for Interior and National Administration to shut down the physical premises of Good News International Premises and Good News Media House, plus, of course, their affiliates that are operating within the Republic of Kenya within 30 days after this Senate adopts this report. Mr. Speaker, it is very important because Kenyans know, and they have seen the footage, where even while this criminal is in court, whenever he makes appearances in court, we still have some people who are foolish enough to celebrate him. So the answer is for the place to be closed down physically. Mr. Speaker, I want to laud the committee that they have asked the Directorate of Criminal Investigations and the Director of Public Prosecutions to initiate the process of freezing the assets belonging to Paul Mackenzie and any other associates, and the proceeds be used to compensate the families of the deceased victims. Mr. Speaker, this is very reflective. Paul Mackenzie, like many such misguided so-called prophets and preachers, they use the pretext of the people's vulnerability to have a better life after death. They convert them into paupers, and in the process, they enrich themselves. It is not surprising, therefore, Mr. Speaker, that the country is abound of preachers who drive fuel guzzlers. Some even have helicopters just to show how good they are at looting the public. Mr. Speaker, the Cabinet Secretary for Interior and Administration must declare the Good News International Ministries and Good News Media House Limited as organized criminal gangs. These are criminal gangs, and I am very, very personally offended by the lack of cooperation on the part of Professor Kindiki when this committee wanted him to help the committee to have witnesses appear before them. Mr. Speaker, it was unfortunate that the professor of law said he was going to speak for the witnesses. Since when? Since when did a minister speak for a criminal? Since when did a minister have privileged information that he could give to a serious committee like this one? I want to appeal to my younger brother, Professor Kindiki. Humble yourself. You should have allowed Kenyans who wanted to give evidence to do so. What are you protecting, Professor? If the DCI, the NIS, was able to appear before the committee, and where they thought certain pieces of evidence required secrecy, they applied for being heard in camera. Our professor has been a deputy speaker in this house. Our professor has been leader of the majority in this house. He knows these privileges. Or was he deliberately trying to frustrate the committee of the Parliament of the Republic of Kenya? Your Excellency, President William Samoei Ruto, we are going to help you to get rid of non-functional ministers who are for anything else as good as dead wood. Mr. Speaker, why would a minister make it difficult for a committee of Parliament to deliver? Oh, when I think about the grief in Kakamega, in the villages of Mumias, in the villages of Ikolmani, in the villages of Shinyalu, in the villages of our community, when we learned that our teachers, some of our teachers had died in Shakahola, I have no kind words for anybody who shielded the exposure of these criminals. Mr. Speaker, in this elaborate report, which I'm glad that now all members are acquainted with, the committee is asking the National Police Service Commission to severely sanction security officers whose acts of commission and omission aided or abetted the Shakahola tragedy 30 days from now. Mr. Speaker, so that it remains evidently clear to the Republic of Kenya that civil servants, senior security officers, they drink and dine on the blood of the poor. The committee has been very specific. It has said on page 135, Mr. Speaker, that Mr. Joseph Kemboi, the senior superintendent of police in charge of the sub-county police commander in Malindi, should be disciplined. Charles Kamau Wangu, the assistant superintendent of police, the criminal investigation officer in Malindi, should be disciplined, as should Simon Odera, superintendent of police, sub-county police commander, as should Mr. Guracha, the superintendent of police, critical infrastructure protection unit in Malindi, as should Augusto Akuna, officer commanding police station in Malindi, as should Hassan Hamara, officer commanding police station Langobaya, and Calvin Maloa Otieno, the DCI of Malindi, Daniel Mudusi Muleli, the county criminal investigation officer Jacinda Wesonga, county police commander Paul Maweu, critical infrastructure protection unit officer, and Joseph Yator, police officer attached to Directorate of Criminal Investigations. They should be disciplined. Mr. Speaker, why I'm reading out these names in this august house is so that members of the public in Shakahola, in Malindi, in Kilifi, in Coast, everywhere in Kenya, should not obey any instruction from any of these officers, should the usual nonsense of government of transferring police officers who are supposed to be sacked be the practice in this case. I can assure any of them, if they appear in Kakamega on transfer, I will request politely the bullfighters of Khaega to resist.
Honorable Bonnie, are you calling for civil disobedience in Kakamega? Kindly withdraw that statement and proceed with your very good contribution.
Mr. Speaker, I am so directed, and I do. But let it be understood that in our community, we say, he who is mourning knows no shame. This is, in this debate, I'm mourning. I have been to those homes. In fact, in some of the homes, Mr. Speaker, we have already buried wet banana stems. In our culture, you bury a wet banana stem when you have lost out all the possibility of ever bringing your beloved one to be buried home. Because having stayed in Kindiki, our families have been there for months on end. And it is either DNA or what cannot be found, and therefore they are unable to know who amongst all these bodies is indeed their own beloved one. So they have buried bananas. I therefore withdraw that remark and appeal to the security organs to ensure that disciplinary action is taken against these criminals who are in uniform. The committee recommends also at 448 that Parliament enacts the proposed Religious Organization Bill 2023 to provide legislative framework for the regulation of religious organizations and establishment of Office of the Registrar of Religious Organization, registration framework, qualification of religious leaders, offenses and penalties for non-compliance. Mr. Speaker, if I had the power, and I don't have, I would convert Senator Mungatana's committee into a special committee to work on this bill. This bill must be available. The tragedy that is Shakahola has now given us the opportunity, the reason, the courage, the excuse for us to face our religious leaders and tell them, you are going to be regulated. Religious organizations must be regulated. Why do we have the Bible? Why do we have the Ten Commandments? Why do we have the teachings of the disciples of Jesus Christ? Why do we have the teachings of Prophet Muhammad in the Quran? Those teachings are meant to set standards so as to regulate. So regulation is already provided for in the Bible, it is provided for in the Holy Quran, is provided for even in the Constitution. We must regulate churches. There are far too many. Let me tell you, from Shigalagala Junction to Marinya, on the road from Shigalagala to Butere.
Senator Boni Khalwale, what is your point of order?
Yes.
Senator Okech.
Mr. Speaker, you know, I wouldn't at all want to, and I'm raising understanding on number 105, on statement of fact. I wouldn't at all want to, you know, interrupt the cadence with which the majority whip is already presenting, and these are very passionate issues that I know that we worked on very, very well. But I want just to say that, you know, the chapter and the report that you have just read is not on the regulation of churches, is on the regulation of religious organizations, which is inclusive of churches. I want to stress this because one of the eminent challenges we faced, Mr. Speaker, when we were conducting, you know, public participation in the entire exercise, it was assumed that we are only making a recommendation to attack or regulate churches. The regulation is for all religious organizations that are not limited to churches. So, Senior, that's what all the cadence I wanted you to go with. But sorry for interrupting, but it's important to emphasize on that. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
That was actually a point of information which you have received.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, I wanted to laud him for that piece of information. But Senator Omigori, if anybody has sent you to this house to be interrupting the Senator of Kakamega when I'm debating, go and tell him that the strategy is for you to wait for your time and then debate.
Senator Mboli,
Mr. Speaker, sir,
Senator Ndokeche is very much in order to inform you or to seek clarification. That is why he's in this house. Don't gag him for that purpose.
Thank you, Mr.
Proceed
Speaker.
And you raise your minutes. You are
Mr.
doing so
Speaker.
well now, clear your minutes.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, if he wanted to inform me, he would have asked me to allow him to inform me, and I would have gladly to have done so. I'm just helping him to be a better legislator. And I can assure you, you have an opportunity to be a better legislator in this house. If you talk to Senator Mungatana.
Senator Bone, you should not talk to your colleague directly.
Mr. Speaker, sir.
You see, you know I'm not here just by chance. I'm here to present the House. So if you could start communicating to your colleague directly, then you better tell me to go and look for or plug my tea in Meru.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm guided. You know, I was speaking to the Holy Quran and the Bible, and I'm not too sure which verse in the two books, but there's a provision that blessed are those who believe when they don't see. Mr. Speaker, sir, in paragraph 509, the committee recommends that the Director of Criminal Investigations investigates the relationship between Paul McKenzie and Ezekiel Odera with a view of establishing any criminal culpability of Ezekiel Odera in aiding or abetting the event in Shakahola tragedy within 30 days of the adoption of this report. Congratulations, my brother Mungatana. This particular recommendation will stand for many years, because when you are frustrated by some civil servants, Mungatana and your team, when you are frustrated by some forces that we have come to learn later, in your efforts to get down to this, you took the unprecedented initiative of going to Mavueni, and the country raised eyebrows. The country thought, the country feared that probably Parliament was being compromised. But now that you have come out with recommendation 509, we respect you. You are holding the name of this Senate high, that it is out of the frustration by functionaries of government that forced you to do the unprecedented by going to Ezekiel Odera's church in the manner you did. I want to appeal to Pastor Ezekiel Odera. Parliament was in your place. The children of God have died because they believed in the teaching of Paul McKenzie. Pastor Ezekiel, I appeal to you from the bottom of my heart. Because of the blood of those children, please come clean.
Senator Professor Margaret Kamar. Senator Mwijaji Mohamed Faki.
Asante Mheshimiwa Spika kwa kunipa fursa hii kuchangia ripoti ya kamati ya uchunguzi ya Shakahola. Mheshimiwa Spika, nianze kwa kuipongeza kamati hii ambayo inaongozwa na Senator wa gatuzi la Tana River, Mheshimiwa Danson Buya Mungatana, na kamati nzima ikiwamo pamoja na mimi mwenyewe binafsi. Tulihudumu katika kamati hiyo katika hali ambayo ilikuwako ni ngumu kidogo, Mheshimiwa Spika, kwa sababu baadhi ya mambo ambayo tuliyapata yalikuwa yanahitajia uchunguzi wa kina, lakini kwa sababu tulifungiwa mfuko wa kufanya uchunguzi, vile vile tukazuiliwa kuwaona baadhi ya mashahidi na kuwahoji. Mheshimiwa Spika, kazi ya kamati ilikuwa kidogo ni ngumu, lakini tuliweza kujitahidi, tukaja na ripoti ambayo ripoti hii Mheshimiwa Spika ni muhimu sana kwa nchi yetu. Kwanza kabisa Mheshimiwa Spika ni kwamba